Welcome to the Life You Love podcast.
We're your hosts, Grace Lemire
and Erin Convertini.
This podcast is for the dreamers and the doers.
For the women who want to create a life they genuinely love waking up to.
We believe that life's short, so let's build one we love.
I got a question the other day that asked us to do an episode on tactical tips to break into freelancing. On this podcast, we love to share ways to increase your income, and picking up some freelance roles can either be such an awesome side hustle, or you can even turn it into your full-time career. Grace and I both have a ton of experience freelancing through different roles like UGC, social media management, ghostwriting, copywriting, and more. Grace has done it full-time. I've done it alongside of my last corporate job, and in this episode, we're going to give you some tactical steps if you want to get started.
I feel like I say this every single episode, but I'm super excited for this one because freelancing, I mean, if you follow me on social media, I feel like you know I have freelanced full-time I started my freelance business about 4 years ago, and then it became my full-time job about 4 months into doing it. So it's been almost 4 years of doing it full-time, which is kind of crazy to think about. And I just love freelancing. It has such a special place in my heart. I think before we get in, I feel like we should clarify what even is freelancing if you're kind of unfamiliar, or if you have an idea but you're not 100% sure, because I do think people use it in lots of different ways. But freelancing at its core is really just a company is paying you as an independent contractor for a specific service. They're not employing you as a full-time employee or a part-time employee. You are essentially an independent contractor or a consultant that is a business, and you are charging the client a fee to deliver a specific service to them. And I think, like, for example, a freelance graphic designer, a company hires them to create some sort of design, and then they give it to the client, and then off you go. You're not getting benefits. You're not getting the typical structure that a company has in terms of, health insurance and 1K contributions from them and, a consistent paycheck. You're not getting a W-2. You have different tax forms. Like, you are the independent, you are the business, and you are charging a client for a specific thing. And you can do it for lots of different services. Freelance writing, kind of like Erin was saying in the beginning, like freelance writing, social media management, UGC, design, photography, videography, like project management, sales. You can do pretty much anything on a freelance basis. So wanted to clarify that before we actually get in. If people are listening to this and they're like, wait a second, I feel like I know what freelancing is, but I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, I feel like if you have listened to Grace's content or my content or the podcast, you might find yourself saying like, I want to start freelancing, but you might not be super specific yet on what type of role you would want to get into, which is totally fine. I also think the beauty of freelancing is you can kind of try a bunch of different things until you see what fits, see what type of roles you like to do. I know I've done a few different type of freelance roles, and I've liked some better than others. So I've gone down that route. Grace, I know you've done probably 5, 6, 7 different types of freelance. Yeah, just a bunch of different things. And then you figure out what you like. But it is super popular. It's a super popular work structure. And I do think it's becoming more popular as time goes on, because I think from a company's perspective, they're realizing that it's easier and a better judge of kind of like ROI when you're hiring someone for a very specific task, rather than hiring them for 40 hours a week and being like, okay, well, now I have to fill their time because I have them for 40 hours a week. Like, for example, if you hiring an assistant for, let's say, 40 hours a week, now you're sitting there being like, okay, I have to fill her time. I have to manage her. It's a lot of work on your part to manage a 40-hour-a-week employee, rather than hiring someone for a very specific task, like copywriting for your emails or for your content editing or something like that. When you're hiring someone for something very specific, it's a lot less from the manager's perspective, because they can very clearly define, okay, is this person doing their job? Are they doing it well? Are we seeing an ROI from the amount of money that we're paying them? So it is becoming super, super popular.
I think there's a stat that says, and don't 100% quote me on this because I don't remember the exact year, but I think it says that by 2035, it's predicted that over half the workforce is going to be independent contractors. And I will say, so contract jobs, there are some types of contract jobs where you're in for 40 hours a week, but you're not getting paid benefits. And to me, I think of that as different than freelance, although you can technically be a freelancer and work for a company for 40 hours. I think you're shooting yourself in the foot if you do that, which is a whole nother a whole nother topic, but I think of them as kind of different. Like you said, it makes so much sense for the companies, especially because if you really think about it, like for certain skills, right? Like copywriting, a lot of companies, especially smaller companies. So I work primarily with startups. They don't need a full-time copywriter. They just don't. They're not writing enough copy to where that makes any sense for them. And for a lot of companies, it doesn't make sense to have a full-time copywriter. They need someone who's going to be there to do a certain project and then dip. And that makes sense for them to do that. Or a marketer, right? A lot of these companies, they're smaller. They don't have super robust marketing channels on every single platform and email and all this stuff. They need somebody who's going to come in and maybe just manage their Instagram or just manage their emails or just manage their newsletter or that whatever. And that it doesn't make sense mathematically for them to hire someone full time because like you said, they're not gonna be able to fill their time. So they bring in somebody who knows how to do that one thing. They hire them to do that one thing. And it makes more sense for all parties involved. And then they don't have to pay them benefits either.
Yeah, I've seen that stat too, where they say that over half of the workforce is going to be freelance. And I think what that tells me is that the world is definitely moving toward specialists, not generalists, because when you do work for a company 40 hours a week, you have a million tasks that you're in charge of because you have the time and they want to fill your time because of that. But when you're hired freelance, a company can be like, you're very good at content creation, but we don't need you to be the entire social media team where you're posting the videos and you're running the ads behind that. We need you to be the content creator because you're good at physically creating the content and so on and so forth. If you're a very good copywriter, but maybe your skills aren't really in paid ads or SEO, they're going to pay you to write the copy and that's it. So I think that that's like kind of what that tells me is that like the world's moving toward specialists. But that's a really good point on the independent contract role versus freelance, because I remember when I was in my last corporate job, I like talked to recruiters all the time. They would reach out about different audit jobs because I was in an audit role. And there were a couple that were independent contract roles. And they were like, okay, this company wants to bring you on as a contractor for 6 months with the opportunity to become W-2 at the end of that 6 months. And I agree that's totally different from freelancing because they're still paying me 40 hours a week. What that's telling me is that the company wants an out, essentially. Like if I work there for 6 months and I'm just an independent contractor and I'm not doing that great of a job, they can let me go at the end of that 6 months instead of like, I think it's a lot harder to fire people when you hire them W-2.
I also want to distinguish too between fractional and freelance, like, cause that it's kind of similar. So there's which we'll get into, but it was a freelancing platform called Pangea.app or Pangea. And it was one of the ones I started using. I like kind of interned for them in college. And then when I graduated college, I was like, well, I've used this platform before. I'll start there. We'll talk about that more later in the episode. But Pangea pivoted. They used to be a freelance platform and they pivoted to like fractional talent because what they're finding in the market is a lot of companies are doing just that. They want to bring someone in on a fractional basis with the opportunity to go full time. And sometimes, for example, I hired an assistant. I hired him through Pangea and he is fractional. He will probably always be fractional with me. Like I'm not looking for a full-time assistant. I don't think I ever need, I mean, probably down the line, I'll have a full-time assistant, right? He is a freelancer. He has a bunch of different things going on. To me, I'm not thinking, okay, I want to go fractional to full-time, but there are companies who do want to do that. They want to bring somebody in for 10 hours a week and see, okay, what can you actually do before I go through the whole process of onboarding you onto payroll and setting up your benefits and all the, and you're doing all these things because getting set up with a fractional talent, because I just went through the process hiring this guy. Took like 3 days. It was the fastest, simplest thing. You go and it's from the client perspective. It's like, okay, if I'm looking for somebody to be a fit at my company, I kind of want to trial them out before I bring somebody else on and get them set up with all these things. So I think also it is similar, right? So essentially my assistant is basically a freelancer in this situation, but there's also fractional work where you're in for 40 hours or you're considered a fractional CMO or a fractional, whatever, and you're in for a little bit more time, but you're basically a freelancer. If you're a 1099, you're kind of freelancing unless you're in there for 40 hours a week at a corporate company where they've hired you as an independent contractor specifically.
Yes, definitely. And then to kind of swap that, because we were just talking about some of the pros from the company's perspective, there's also a lot of pros from the freelancer's perspective. Again, from someone who has been freelancing full time for the last 4 years. And then on my perspective, I've done it alongside of my corporate job. I've done it alongside content creation. There's so many pros to freelancing, which is why we love it so much. I think the biggest one is that if you're learning a new skill, but you maybe don't have a ton of experience, it can be easier to land a freelance role rather than a full-time role. Because again, from the company's perspective, it's a way higher lift to hire you full-time, and there's a lot more risk involved because it's harder to fire you rather than hiring a freelancer. So it can be a lot easier to kind of get your foot in the door if you want to test out some different skills, some different roles, and like build up your portfolio.
I also think one of the benefits for me is the flexibility of it. I mean, as a freelancer, because you're a business owner, you retain the right to work when and how you want. And clients get to choose if that works for them. And if it doesn't, you don't have to work with them. So for example, just like going back to my assistant, he's a freelancer. I straight up said to him, I'm like, I don't care when you do your hours. Like if you want to do your hours at 4 a.m, I literally don't care. Like it's up to you to do it when you want. And I act the same way with my clients. I'm like, if I want to write, if I get like a, burst of energy to write your copy at 9 p.m., great. You can't tell me that I can't do that. And I think that's really nice, like having that level of flexibility. If I want to take a Friday off, I just work extra on Thursday or work on Saturday. And I feel like you don't always get that level of flexibility at full-time jobs. I know sometimes they can be very flexible depending on what you do, but that's not always the case. And I also think the compensation to me is significantly higher. Like I talk to people who are in full-time copywriting roles, or there was a journalist I was talking to, and her hourly pay, I was like, girl, I literally said to her, I was like, I am going to connect you with some people in my network because you need to be doing some freelance writing, because she was at like a really, really big publication and her writing is amazing. I charge more for writing than she does. And I was like, or than her full-time job is paying her. I was like, you are being severely underpaid. Like your work is so good. You could be making a lot more as a freelancer. Yes, you have to pay taxes. So you have to think about that. About 30 to 35% of what you make is going to go to taxes, or you should save for taxes. But like, I still make more. Like I am still making more than if I did what I do now in a full-time role. And yes, I do have to pay for my own benefits and I don't necessarily have PTO, but to me, yeah, the benefits just like, I feel like because I make so much more doing freelancing I don't feel like I'm missing. Like, it covers more than the cost of the benefits.
Yes. And the income is more scalable because we haven't really touched on this much, but we've kind of mentioned like hourly freelance work versus retainer freelance work. And once you get to a certain point, maybe like your first couple of freelance clients will probably be hourly depending on the type of client, but you can get to a point where you only take retainer deals. And once you get really good at your one or two very specific skills, it might take you a lot less time to get that work done, which means that your hourly rate inherently goes up so much more. And when you said on the flexibility as well, like that's totally true on the flexibility in terms of your work week. But then also I think when you zoom out, the flexibility is so great too, because you can kind of scale up and scale back your freelance clients as needed. So you have a corporate job and you're in kind of like a low season with your role, like you're not on a project right now, or you're not like, you haven't gotten a promotion yet, so you're still in more of an entry level role and you have more time, you pick up a freelance client, but then a year later you get a huge promotion and you don't have time. Like there's a lot more flexibility to pick up an extra client as needed, or take a client away if the client's no longer serving you, if life gets busy. So there's a lot of flexibility to work more or work less.
And even just going back to, before we kind of get into some of the like real tactical stuff, but touching on the retainer versus hourly is you're charging a specific amount per hour of your work. So like $35 per hour. You do an hour of work, they pay you $35. Retainer is a flat fee for a specific set of deliverables that you've negotiated with that client. So for example, $3,500 a month for 20 UGC videos a month, or $3,500 a month for 3 X posts per week and 1 newsletter per week. These are current clients that I have, just giving you exact examples. Like, $1,440 a month for 4 newsletters a month, or whatever it may be. You're agreeing to, okay, I'm going to deliver these deliverables for this price. And like Erin said, for example, one of my first clients was a social media management client. I charged them $20 an hour for 10 hours a week. Well, what happens at first, I take all 10 hours a week to be able to do that because it's a new client. I don't know what I'm doing. So it takes me a full 10 hours. I get paid that money. was like $800 a month, or am I doing math wrong? I don't know, but something like that, right? So then I say, okay, well, a couple months later, I start to get a feel for this brand, this company. I know it like the back of my hand now. I have my flow, I have my systems, things are working, whatever. It's no longer taking me 10 hours a week. So now let's say it only takes me 7. Well, now I can only bill the client for 7 hours. Well, what the heck? Hold on. So now I'm doing the exact same amount of work, but I'm now getting paid less. That makes no actual sense. When you're in a retainer opportunity, which is what I did with that client that I had, I said, okay, I'm moving over to retainer models, $1,200 a month, either take it or leave it, whatever. They took it. Now I'm getting paid $1,200 a month, whether it takes me 10 hours a week or not. So now that I'm faster at it and it does not take me 10 hours a week, I'm getting paid a higher amount. But let's say it was even the same, you're getting paid the same to do work at a faster pace. And I think that's what in a corporate, I've never worked in corporate, so this is just what I hear from my friends, but you start to you're assigned to a project, you get the systems down, and all of a sudden they say, here you go, here's more work. And all of a sudden a year goes by and you're like, what I'm doing and my job description does not match. And now you're trying to renegotiate your pay because your scope has gotten bigger and the company doesn't want to pay you more because they've budgeted for the role that they have. Versus if you're saying, I'm charging you $1,200 for social media management, here you go. They know I'm always going to get social media management from this person from $1,200, and I'm not getting anything more from them because our contract says I get social media management and nothing else. And if I want to add on more services to my freelancer, I have to pay them more. And so I think that gives you a lot of kind of power in your position as a freelancer as well. So I wanted to clarify that. But I think this is a good transition into like the first tactical. This isn't really tactical, I guess, but it's just some tough love and some brutal honesty. And I'm going to give tough love in this episode because I think people need it. You need to set your expectations appropriately if you're going to break into freelancing. I think there's a lot of content on the internet that is like, freelancing is the best thing ever. And like, I'm like working at a pool with my laptop and I'm traveling all the time and whatever. That does happen. That is a potential. However, you don't get there overnight. You don't get there in a couple of months. And behind all of that, there's a lot more work going on. Fun fact, a lot of the people who post like their laptop at a pool or a beach or whatever, they take those photos and then they go inside or they sit outside by the pool for like 5 seconds. Your laptop overheats outside, guys. It overheats. Like, yeah, you're not sitting there at the pool all day when you're taking calls. You're in a hotel room. These people who travel full time, they're and freelance, they're in a hotel room most of the day doing the work and then being outside. Like, so don't let those pictures and things fool you. Yes, that is a potential and it is part of it, but also freelancing is a lot of work. It is a job. In fact, you're running a business. This is not just like, oh yeah, like hee hee ha ha, I get paid to work whenever I want. No, it's like you're actually hustling for it. And especially in the beginning, oh my gosh, the first like 6 months of building my freelance business, simply put, with the trenches. I was in the trenches, okay? Like I didn't just start making like 10K months out of nowhere. It took a lot of work. So if you're going to do it, set your expectations, because I think if you're envisioning, okay, this is going to be a lot of work, but it's worth it to me because I want that life more than I want the comfortability of staying where I am, fine. Then I think you'll be far more successful. But if you think that you're just going to like end up with a 6-figure business in the span of a month, I think you're going to get frustrated so fast and you're going to quit.
Yeah, I think that all the time too, how everyone says like, start a side hustle, start freelancing, start whatever it may be. At the end of the day, what you're doing is you're giving yourself another job. And like, that's how you have to treat it. If you're treating it any other way, you're going to end up hating it. And people will say like, I don't want a second job. And that's fine, then don't. But for a lot of people who want to increase their income, like you're going to pick up extra jobs and your extra jobs are just going to be at a freelance capacity. So you have to think about it as a second job. And like you said, especially at the beginning, you're going to be doing a lot of upfront work before you get into a groove where you have your system set up. You really know the skill that you're servicing your clients. I kind of like to think about it as when you're in college, you're doing so much upfront work and you're not getting paid, or you're getting paid very little. You're doing an internship here and there to get better at your skills. You're taking classes, all of that. It's kind of like that again, especially if you're freelancing in an area where that's like completely unrelated to the full-time job that you have. Like, for example, I was in a corporate audit job. I started freelancing in user generated content and social media management. Those two things are completely unrelated. So I needed to learn a completely different skill set. So naturally, I wasn't making that much money. It was a lot to find clients, to get signed with clients, to start making a little bit of money. I was constantly practicing. It was taking me so much extra time to film. So the amount of money that you're going to make compared to the amount of work that you're going to put in is very, very, like, the difference is so large at the beginning, but then eventually you'll get to a point where you're getting your systems down. It's not taking you as long. You're getting good at the skills. And then you're like, okay, the amount of work that I'm putting in versus the money that I'm making is starting to make sense.
I feel like I shared this on my social media. It's pretty far back, pretty old. I was actually looking for the video the other day, but when I first started, I charged my clients $20 an hour. And that's fair. That was a fair rate because I didn't know what the freak I was doing. Like I don't have the right to command a high rate at that point. And you know what? I worked 70 hours a week. And I don't say that as a flex because I like basically burned myself into the ground. Like I was just so burnt out when I finally like came up for air. I remember the first week I worked 60 hours. I was like, wow. I was like, this is what balance feels like. Like I was like, this is crazy, right? But I was working 40 hours a week freelancing and 30 hours a week doing Instacart grocery delivery because I needed money coming in. And even though I'm spending 40 hours a week freelancing, I'm not making that much because I'm charging my clients $20 an hour and then I'm putting 30% of that aside for taxes. I think that people sometimes don't, that's like if you have a full-time job and you want to freelance on the side of it because you want to eventually freelance full-time, you have to have the expectation that you will just simply be working a lot. Like I'm sorry, like it's just, that's what it's going to be. But you always mention on the podcast, and I always bring it up a million times over because I think it's so great. You talk about like a strategic period of imbalance. And I think it is so relevant. Like I said, I committed to 4 months. I mean, I didn't know it was gonna be 4 months. I expected it to be a lot longer, but I did that for like 4 months. And I was hustling so hard that after I started freelancing May 2021, like middle of the month after I graduated college, and by September of 2021, that was my first month that I did freelancing full time. And in that first month, I think I made like $4,700 working full time. To me, when you got to put a third away for taxes, that's not that much. But then a couple months later, I would have like $8,000, $9,000 months. But I was working. I was still working 60 hours a week at that point to make $4,700. But then it got to a point where now it's like I can charge a client $4,000 a month for something that I charged $1,200 for 4 years ago. I think all this to say, set your expectations and don't expect it to just build itself into something overnight because it's not going to. And if you set that expectation, you're going to be sorely disappointed.
Yeah, I think that kind of translates into our next section, which is to identify your freelance worthy skills. And since you kind of like just told your backstory, I'll kind of talk about some of my first freelance clients because I went about it a little bit of a different way in that my very first thing that I started was content creation on my own pages. And then I got into freelancing. So I graduated from college. I started my corporate job. Alongside of my corporate job, I started doing content creation. So building up my own channels, posting on my own account. And then a couple months after that, that's when I started applying for freelance gigs. I didn't even know that like UGC or social media management was a thing until I became a content creator. And it kind of worked out because my content on my own pages sort of became my portfolio. So I could show brands like, okay, even though I've never done UGC before, I have posted a video over on my channel. So like I know how to work CapCut. That kind of became my portfolio and could show my skills. But my very first UGC deal was $25 a video. And I did that. Basically, the brand would give me as many videos per month as I wanted. So that was great. I could do more if I had more time, but for a very low amount of money. My second one was $75 a video and kind of same thing. I think the brand said up to like 10 videos a month or something. And then the first social media management gig that I got, I did it for 4 or 5 months and it was $1,000 a month for 30 TikTok videos, which is crazy.
Criminal.
No, literally. And I was doing those all at the same time. So I'm like doing all of these videos for all of these brands, posting for myself, working my corporate job. Luckily it was remote. So it was like, it was fine. And like you said, like you have to go through those periods of imbalance because I got significantly better at my content creation skills. I learned that those rates are too low. So eventually I could charge more. You learn a lot, but yeah, so just kind of on the whole idea of starting low and learning and scaling from there. But like we said, the first thing that you're going to have to do is identify your freelance worthy skills. And I think the biggest misconception with this is that you need to be like an expert in something before you get started or before you try to find a freelance client, because you can learn a lot of things as you go. I know like you and I do not have marketing backgrounds, and all of our freelance gigs have been in the marketing space. You can learn things as you go. I think the beauty of freelancing is you can kind of just like pick things that interest you, learn about it, get better at it, charge a low rate to like get some clients under your belt and learn from there.
I also too, like, just to give people some hope and some comfort, is that, for example, when I hired my assistant, my budget was $35 an hour. That's what I was like, okay, I can dedicate that much to this person. Being realistic, as me being the client, right? I know at that rate, I'm not expecting an expert. I'm not going to get somebody who has scaled another brand, who, to, millions of views. I'm not going to get somebody who's written, the most amazing sales copy for email. Like, I know that. So what I'm looking for, because you have to be very serious. $35 an hour, you're not getting someone who's like an expert in the industry. But clients know that. So if you are someone who is new to it and you're like, okay, yeah, I'm not an expert, that's okay. There's clients who need someone like you. However, when that is the case, so let's say you maybe don't have some of the hard skills, like your copywriting or your marketing or your project management or whatever is not 10 out of 10, maybe it's 6 out of 10. The soft skills are going to be what gives you edge. That is it's your moneymaker. And that's what helped me in the beginning. The very first client I took on that was $20 an hour, I literally had never managed an Instagram account in my life. And that's what I was doing, was managing this company's Instagram account. I didn't have I learned everything on the spot. I was like literally I was using Canva to make like Reels covers. And I didn't even have a Canva account. Like, I don't think, before I started that. Like, I literally, when I tell you, I was like starting from zero and learning in the moment. I was learning in the moment. But I was incredibly communicative and resourceful. So I always said to the client, he would ask me questions and I would say, you know what? I actually don't know the answer to that, but I'm going to find it and I'm going to get back to you. And then I would take time off the clock, not billing him for it. And I would go find the answer, come back on the clock, solve the problem, and then go relay to him, okay, here's what the problem was and here's how I solved it, so that we all know for the future. And I was communicative. I was always like, here's this, here's that. Like, when he'd email me, I'd get back to him quickly. Those things are so important. And those are the things that so many people do not have. And I know everybody listening to this knows that, because we all know somebody, we've all worked with somebody, whether it's a coworker or whatever, where you look at them and you're like, how the heck did you get this job? You know what I mean? Like, you're good at what you do, but like, you can't communicate. You're always late to things. Like, I email you and you take forever. We know how important the soft skills are. So if you don't have that experience, the hard skills, you just have to leverage your soft skills. And that's, for example, my assistant is absolutely amazing. I'm like, I could not imagine running my business without him at this point. And he's only been with me for like a month. But the things that, he's good at the hard skills too, but he's not like, it's his communication, the fact that he's resourceful, the fact that he's like proactive. He's like, hey, what do you need this week? Hey, I have extra time. What do you need? Hey, like, I noticed you're working on this. Do you need help with that? Do you need help with it? Like, he's proactive about all of it, that I'm not sitting here being like, oh, you didn't, I have to give you feedback on the copy that you wrote. Boo freaking who? I don't care. I know that if I give him that feedback, he's going to go implement it right away. And that makes him an invaluable member of my team at this point, that I'm like, yeah, I would never, like, I'm not getting rid of him. You know what I mean? Like, I need him here. So just to give people who are listening some hope, if you don't necessarily, you're not a 10 out of 10 expert in your field, like, you can still charge $35 an hour and be new to it. Just leverage your soft skills, really capitalize on that.
100%. That's such a good point about the client isn't expecting what they're not paying for example, because I've hired some freelancers too. I have 2 on my team currently, but back in January, I posted an Instagram story about like potentially hiring for a YouTube editor in 2025. I think someone asked me like, oh, what are your 2025 like business goals or something? And I said like, oh, this year I potentially want to bring on a YouTube editor. This girl sent me an email and it was very well articulated. And she was like, hey, Erin, I've been following you forever. I would love to take a stab at editing your YouTube videos. I think she said in the email, like, just to let you know, I don't have a ton of YouTube editing experience, but I forget what she said in the email, but she was very upfront about like, I don't have a ton of experience, but I'll charge this amount. It was like $75 a video or something. And she said I would be willing to do like a free trial, like edit one of your YouTube videos for free. And I came back to her and said, I don't believe in free work, so I'll pay you for the trial and I can do $100 video, because she edited the video. I paid her $100 for the trial. I liked what she did. And then I started charging her $100 per video, and she did totally fine. So it's like, just put yourself out there, be willing to like show your value in other ways. And yeah, you can definitely land your first couple of clients like that.
I think this also goes into like our next really tactical tip is, for example, in that situation, this girl reached out to you and sent you a well-articulated email. Like you said, she did not have I'm sure she didn't have a website. She didn't have a portfolio. She didn't have all this. Stop building a website. Oh my gosh, guys, stop it. I'm going to lose my mind. I feel like people, for some reason, we have this idea in our heads that we need a website. You don't need a website. You don't. Stop it. People will be like, oh, well, like I want to get started, but I need to make a website, or my website doesn't look good. Nobody cares. No one cares about you. Do you know how many times I have a website? It's literally just for my course, because I had to have one to have a landing page for the course, just the way that Kajabi is set up. I needed to have a website. It's hideous. It's hideous. And it doesn't even mention my freelance services. Nobody goes there. And in my 4 years of freelancing, has anyone ever been like, what's your website? No. And even if somebody did, I would just be like, oh, I don't have one. Here you go. Let's hop on a call. Oh my gosh. It's just, I don't understand why people feel like we need one. You don't. Stop wasting time building a website. To me, I think sometimes people use I need to build a website as an avoidance technique, because it's uncomfortable to just put yourself out there. So you start to fill your calendar with stuff that you don't need to do, that's not moving the needle. Focus on generating revenue. Okay, get out there and do whatever it takes to get a client. And then fine, if you really want to have a website, fine. And I think it makes sense for some people. For example, if you want to be a website designer and you have no clients, having your own website might benefit you, because you're like, here's an example of the website that I built that I could then build for you. That's fine, right? You also don't need a portfolio. For some industries, I would say having some samples of your work is helpful. For example, if you are a freelance photographer, yeah, maybe go like take some pictures outside or of some people, and then show like, here's some pictures that I took, because otherwise people are like, okay, I'm not really going to hire you to like take pictures of my family or my wedding or whatever, when you've never shot a picture in your life ever. But I think people get so caught up on having this like insane in-depth portfolio and a website, and it's just a waste of time. If you decide to put together a portfolio or some sample work, which I think sample work is good, because you need to be able to express to a client what value you bring. And sometimes they do want to see some level of like, okay, you might not be true to this. You're still new to this, but it's fine. Like there's something there. Literally, well, I was going to say get in Canva and make a little like one of the little landing pages, but people mess up. People go so wrong in Canva, and the Canva portfolios I've seen sometimes, I'm like, whoa guys, get back in the lab, because what is that? But there are lots of like landing page builders, or you can make a Google Drive folder that has samples of your work. But do you need to make a fully fleshed out website with 12 pages and all these funky animations and whatnot? And do you need to have 27,000 portfolio pieces before you go get a client? No. And I think that trying to do that is you just avoiding taking action.
100%. I was going to say, like, because I do think if you're in a more creative freelance role, like if you're trying to get a UGC client or a social media management client or a YouTube editing client, like something that's creative and visual, something to put your sample of work in,
a sample
can
piece.
be helpful. Like a Google Drive link is totally fine. But if you want to put it into some type of like portfolio there, it is so easy to make a little landing page on Canva. If you go onto TikTok and you search Canva UGC portfolio, there will be a million examples. And Canva, you can just click like website landing page and you can make a free one right there. Like it is so easy. Do not spend more than an hour on it. Make it super simple. Just put it cohesive. Get get some colors on there. Like it's so easy. Don't spend more than an hour on it, but just something to put some sample of work in. And then I think that gets into like, okay, well, if I've never had a client before, what's my sample of work? You're really going to have to get creative here. Anything from like, if you are trying to get some freelance roles in like UGC, film some videos, even if the brand's not paying you to film videos for them, film some sample videos that would be similar to the type of videos that you would be creating if a brand was hiring you for it. Something like that. Just get creative. If you're hiring for, or if you're trying to get hired for a copywriting role, well, look at what a copywriting portfolio looks like and just do some samples. It doesn't have to take you a ton of time. I totally agree. I think sometimes it's an avoidance thing because you're avoiding doing the needle moving things that are actually going to get you your first client, but having some type of portfolio or sample of work can definitely help. And I know the other thing that we had on this list was optimizing your LinkedIn portfolio, or not portfolio, your profile, optimizing that for freelance gigs. So like saying on your LinkedIn that you are a freelancer, that you offer X, Y, and Z services, that can absolutely help. I will say, thinking back to when I was in corporate, I didn't feel comfortable doing this just because like my manager followed me on LinkedIn, and that would have been a little bit like, oh, you work in corporate audit, but your LinkedIn says that you're a freelance like UGC creator. So there's some other things you can do to get around that as well. Like you said, there's other platforms like Pangea, Contra, Upwork, Fiverr. Like you can get around all of these things. It's just going to be what makes the most sense for you.
Yeah. 2 notes on this before we move into the next section is on the topic of you don't need a fancy portfolio. You also don't need a contract template, and you don't need like invoicing software. You don't need a business bank. You don't need there. People, well, I need a contract. If you go get it, if your first client is on Pangea, the contract's written for you. You read it and you sign it. You choose whether you're going to sign it or not. Like, and also, if you take on a client that's not on a platform, great. Then you say to the client, amazing, great. We just had this call. I'll send you a copy of the contract over the next 24 hours. Or do you have a contract template that you typically use with freelancers? I'm happy to take a look at that as well. They might already have one that they use with all the freelancers they hire. You can then take a look at it and sign the contract. Or then you go say, okay, cool. Let me go get a contract over the next 48 hours and send it back to them or whatever. You don't need to have everything. You also don't need fancy schmancy invoicing software. Like I used to invoice a lot of my clients on Stripe. It's a free account, and I just go into Stripe, PayPal, like there's just other ways but I think again, people feel like they need to have everything figured out. You really don't until there are things you should think about. Like absolutely, like think about things like, okay, oh, I saw this ad for this invoicing software. That might be a good option when I get there. But don't go subscribing and paying for invoicing software and all these different things when you haven't even gotten a client yet. Like, you know what I mean? Like you don't have anyone to invoice. Like take it one step at a time. You don't need to do all of the things. And also when it comes to LinkedIn, obviously I've never been in corporate, so I can't speak to like the whole people in corporate seeing my profile, whatever, but also like there's nothing stopping you from creating a second LinkedIn account and literally blocking your boss and blocking your coworkers. Literally you can, unless it says somewhere in your contract that you have at your corporate job that you are not allowed to. If you're offering similar services, some corporate jobs will say that you can't offer similar services, which I think is so problematic. But obviously I know some people sign those contracts with their corporate jobs and then they're kind of stuck in that situation. But if there's nothing saying that in your contract and you just don't feel comfortable because you're already connected to someone from your corporate job on your current LinkedIn profile, there is nothing stopping you from making another LinkedIn profile that says, let's say you do work in audit, you can have another one that says freelance social media manager and market yourself as a freelancer there. It's got nothing to do with them. You know what I mean? And I get it, like can make an awkward situation. Fine, block them on the account so that they literally never see it. Like truly. And also one other note that I forgot to say earlier is when it comes to creating sample work pieces, there are several ways to stand out. I remember somebody once sent me a video. I think they were a video editor and they were pitching to me to edit my content. At the time, I didn't need a video editor. I don't want one. I like doing it myself. But they sent me a video that was like, it was like, hey Grace, here's and they're on the camera, and then it was like B-roll and whatever, and the video was edited, and the video itself was basically like a pitch to work with me, but I could see their editing and how they were doing it and what their skill level looked like through the video. And I was like, that took some effort, because they start the video off being like, hey Grace, and I assume, because I know like on the back end now, I assume that they film a lot of clips of them being like, hey Grace, hey Erin, hey Joe, hey whatever, and then the rest of the video is pretty much the same, and they just change out that first clip and then send out with all their pitches, great, right? To me, I got that. I was like, you just put in some effort. And now I'm like, that's really cool. Now I'm more apt to work with you versus if you just send me stuff that, I mean, you don't have to personalize it, but like get creative with what you're doing, right? Like there's different ways to go about it to create sample pieces.
I've gotten that too, where people will send me a Loom video where they're like auditing my landing page or something, or editing a YouTube video, and they'll grab my current YouTube video and they'll be like, okay, if I was editing this, here's what I have done differently. And they'll literally like pick apart my editing and show me what they would have done differently. And that is such a good way to stand out, because on Loom, it's so easy to screen record and show your face on there. That video probably didn't take them longer than 5 to 10 minutes. But yeah, you're right. If you can see the person, you have such a better chance of actually getting hired.
Yeah, I do think there's a level too. One thing I will say before we move on to the next section, because I'm yapping too much here, but one thing I will say that this does like irk me a little bit. So I think you have to be careful. Go to pitch someone on your services and insult them. I don't know what it is about doing that and why people do it so much, but I will block you because that will piss me off. Like, and I don't really get pissed off, but like if I've gotten emails where they're like, hey, like I was watching your content and it's cool, but it's just really not engaging. Here's like 3 ways that I'd make it more engaging. Excuse me.
Why would you ever want to work with that person?
Yeah. And then they're like, it's really not engaging, but like I helped someone else improve their content and they made $1 million. Excuse you. Like, first of all, I didn't ask what you thought. I don't even know who you are. Like, why would I trust your opinion?
There's a nice way to do it.
There's a nice way to do it. And also like, I have gotten those Loom videos of people basically like critiquing what I'm doing. And I'm like, again, I didn't ask for that. That's a very weird thing to say.
Well, I like them.
See, I mean, obviously
there's a good way to do it. Like there's a good way to go about it. Like if you're going to go onto my landing page and be like, hey, like it's awesome that you're already converting, but like I think that X, Y, and Z are the biggest areas for improvement. Like you're showing your value and showing where you could like insert yourself in someone's business.
See,
but yeah, to critique.
Yeah. Like where they're like, hey, like, because it's so out of pocket when they're like, yeah, like your editing's really good, but like, honestly, like it's just not that great. Like it could be better. I'm like, excuse you. Like, I think there's a way to do it. The way that I prefer, if people are going to take that approach to pitching, which goes into our next section about getting your first clients. But if you're going to take that approach to pitching, the way that I think it is well done is if you say, hey, like, I'm a freelance copywriter. I love your content. And I just was like binging through all of it, take this with a grain of salt, but I just wanted to reach out because I saw, in your stand store, I love what you're doing. If you change this like CTA, you might actually convert a lot more because the psychology behind it is XYZ. Just wanted to send over this tip. Like if you give it a shot and it works, like let me know. And then just have something like in your email signature or something that says like how to work with you or something. Leave it in my court. Offer me value. And if I actually get value out of what you just offered me, I'm going to be way more likely to then work with you. If you're like, hey, like I went in your stand store and like your CTAs all suck and like I think you should get out of my email, get out of my inbox. I don't know you and I think that's rude, like if I'm not asking you for your thoughts and advice. So I think you have to be careful about it, but I do think putting yourself, you miss all the shots you don't take. So put yourself out there, get in people's emails. But anyways, okay, getting your first clients, transitioning into this because we still have more to cover, but platforms are a great place to start when you want to get your first clients. Pangea is a great one. I'm so biased because I've been on Pangea since like probably 2019. I did like 2 freelance projects with them in college. Then I interned for them and I absolutely love them. I am such a fan of Pangea. The people behind it, the platform, the pay, everything on that platform I love. And I am their freelance social media manager to this day. Pangea is amazing. Contra, I have gotten one client on Contra, $45 an hour gig. Loved that client. She was amazing. I do believe Contra is a bit more exclusive at this point where you do need more skills to be able to get on there. So I don't know. I know Pangea is also slightly more exclusive as well at this point, and you do need to have some level of skills to get on there. Like if you have 0 experience, it might be difficult to get on them. But LinkedIn is also great. And freelancing newsletters. You can just Google like for example, UGC. There's a X account that's like UGC opportunities. They have a newsletter. They send out UGC opportunities every week. Or you can Google like copywriting or freelance writing newsletters, and you'll find somewhere they'll share opportunities. And some of those opportunities are actually never posted publicly. People who run these newsletters, clients will reach out to them, be like, hey, can you put out a blast to your newsletter? I need somebody, and I really don't want to sift through a million applications on LinkedIn. They'll put it in the newsletter. So those are really great opportunities, but also I wouldn't discount the power of networking with people simply for the sake of networking, not pitching. I think when people think of getting their first freelance clients, they think about pitching. I think with pitching can be done tastefully, as we were just talking about, but I think that cold pitching people and trying to convert them is a colossal waste of time in the beginning. Because, for example, let's say a copywriter reaches out to me, or let's say not a copywriter, let's pick somebody else, graphic designer reaches out to me, and they're trying to convince me to get their services, like cold pitching. They're trying to hard sell to me. I don't need a graphic designer. So no matter what you say in that pitch, I'm not looking for one right now. So I'm just going to ignore you, or I'm going to be like, hey, I don't need this, and I'm going to leave you alone. And then now you just pitched me and it didn't go anywhere. Versus if you're on platforms, or you are on LinkedIn, or you're interacting with people who need the services, they're looking for someone who needs the service, it's much easier to pitch them because they know they have a problem and they're looking for a solution. And now you just have to pitch them that you're the right solution. You're not trying to pitch them on both the service and like why they need graphic design, right? So it's much easier to go about it that way. But going back to networking, you don't have to, I was gonna say you don't have to, but you just shouldn't at all. Don't cold pitch every single person you connect with. Being on the other side of it now, like I am a freelancer and freelancers pitch to me because I am also like a business owner. If every interaction you're just cold pitching me on your service, it just gives me like a little bit of an ick. Do you, like, if you're connecting with me on LinkedIn, do you care to connect with me because you think there could be a mutual exchange of value? Like, or you like what I'm doing, or you whatever, or are you just trying to pitch me on your service? It's kind of icky. And the way that I've approached it, and I talk about this like in depth in my freelance course, is connect with people because they're people that you would want to work with, and just express what you like about them or what they're building, them or their company. And then when they're ready, when they're in the mindset of, okay, I have a problem, my website looks like dookie and I need a designer to come fix it, change my branding, whatever. They're going to remember, what, I had this really genuine reaction with Grace, and, her work, like she shared some of her work on LinkedIn. I think she'd actually be a great fit. Because those people, like I said, I work primarily with startup founders, for example. They do not want to make a post that has 1,000,001 applicants they have to sift through. They want to move quickly. So once you've had that interaction with them, you've opened the door a little bit, but you're not pitching them. You're just connecting genuinely. But now you're connected. They're seeing what you offer. When it comes time for them to hire someone that does what you do, they often remember that you connected with them. And now they just go right to you because it's way faster. If they can just go to you and say, hey, are you accepting clients? And you're like, yeah, I am. They could literally have you hired in 3 days. Versus if they're posting on some sort of platform, they're waiting a week for applications, they're going through all these discovery calls, It's just much faster. So and that's how I got some of my early clients as well, by doing that, several of them. And there's tons more reasons about why networking is important too, which I actually made a post about it on LinkedIn the other day. But don't discount the power of simply just networking for the sake of networking, because it will bring you business if you are doing it consistently.
Totally. And I think all of this is to say, and to kind of wrap all of this up, is your first clients are going to be absolutely the hardest. Once you get your first couple of clients and you start to get into the swing of things, it becomes exponentially easier because you are inherently building your portfolio, your sample of work. You're getting better at your skills. You're learning how to effectively apply to positions. And now you have something to show when you do apply to positions. So your first couple of clients absolutely are the hardest. And I know an episode that we're filming right after this that will be up next week is all about building our personal brands, which can also be a really great way to get your first couple of clients. Because when you have a personal brand, that inherently shows your portfolio and your sample of work when you are talking about your skills and what you like to do and what you're really good at online for everyone to see. So I think that wraps up this episode. Let us know in Spotify if you like this type of episode, if you want us to talk more about freelancing, because we love talking about increasing our income on this podcast. But leave any questions, comments, feedback in Spotify, or you can DM us on Instagram at The Life You Love Pod. We love hearing from you guys. But thanks for tuning into the podcast, and until next week.